Okay, we needed to get out of the sun, it was too hot. Okay, so you have cognitive functions. Everybody has, based on those 4 letters, gives you 4 different cognitive functions. There's 8 cognitive functions altogether, so you're going to have 4 of them, and 4 you're not going to have at all. So sometimes by using process of elimination, you can kind of figure out which cognitive function you have and which ones you don't have at all. And so you have these sheets, these things with the list of cognitive functions. I think the important thing to know is cognitive function is how, it's your processing center, it's how your brain operates. And so of your first 2 function, one is going to be an introverted function and one's going to be an extroverted function. If you are an extrovert of your 4 letters, your extroverted function comes first and then your introverted function. And then the flip. So like for myself, I said sometimes it's hard for me to tell if I'm a commander or an architect because it's hard for me to see if my TE or my NI come first. In the end though, it doesn't make a huge difference if it's first or second, but knowing the right function that is in the first or second is going to make a big difference. Like, so it wouldn't matter if I'm TE-NI or NITE, but it wouldn't matter a lot if I think I'm SE-NI, or well, you can be that, but whatever, FE and TI. It makes a big difference. I still said those wrong. You get the point.
You get the point.
So we're going to do your extroverted function is how the world sees you and how you interact in the world.
That's how you appear in extroverted scenarios.
So we have NE, SE, TE, FE. So really quick touching on, because you can look at the worksheet yourself and kind of see, like, of these E functions, which one do you tend to be? Are you about possibilities and options? Are you about the immediate physical world? Are you about process and improvement? Are you about social experiences or shared experiences? And in here we talk a lot about looking at how it functions for your strength or for your weakness. So for me, I notice, like, if I read through these, my strength, easily adapt from information gathered. Well, I consider myself adaptable, but when I look at some of that's an NE. But if I look at T, I'm like, observe the world and place everything into a clear cause and effect relationship so that they can accomplish tasks effective and efficient. Okay, well, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm way more that than easily adaptable. And so you have to go through this a little bit, questioning yourself, versus FE, are you looking at building bridges, improving communication, all live in harmony? That's my husband. Everything's in harmony. And as a parent, I can go, oh, I can see that in Gabby, that she never really rocks the boat. She's super intelligent, has all these strengths, but she was so easy to parent. And an SE sees the world as it actually is. I know this in Isabel because when we go hiking, she notices every single detail, like a dead coyote on the truck in front of us. She sees flowers that will pass. I'm like, I did not see that. So what we're gonna do is, I don't need to necessarily, one of these is definitely you, whether you know it or not, but one of them is your dominant. Now one could be your tertiary, your third, or your fourth, but try to focus on like where you immediately go to, because that other, you're gonna have 2 of these and 2 of these, but we wanna just really focus on the primary one. And then you're also gonna look at your introverted and think about, like, okay, SI, you're relying on memories and standards. Your strength is that you maintain stability in the world. You make decisions based on experiences, and you're tangible. NI, deeper meanings. You're always like trying to save the world. You want to see future outcomes that are beyond its literal sense. You can imagine you get an SI and an NI in a conversation, like one's talking theoretical, big picture idea, or big ideas, and the other is like, wait, where did I get that in my past that I experienced that? I need to have data to have this conversation. FI, you're very much about, you're an empathizer. You want to explore many forms of expression, possibilities, options, but you're very much emotional. And personally, I think if you're testing yourself, I think people are going to confuse FI and FE often. So think of it as, are you processing through emotions that you're sensing and feeling, not like, is somebody else reading, am I just using their feelings?
Yeah. And if you know your functions, knowing your dominant is going to change so much, because every Myers-Briggs type has a dominant function and it's shared with 2 others. And if you are still confused on whether you're N or S, this is going to help a lot when you figure out your functions.
And same with, TE or TI and FI. And then if you're TI, you're about possibilities and options. Your strength is you can discover things, and the ability to not be misguided while in pursuit of understanding. I think we almost have to update. That's a confusing
TI
description
is
you're categorizing.
Put things in boxes. I think of the TI function as I love to put information into boxes. Whether you decide what you decide to do with that doesn't matter. If you like putting information in boxes, and maybe if you're an S type, you'll probably like to take that information and apply it tangibly. If you're an N type, you might like to take that information and create an idea off of it. It doesn't matter. If you like information in boxes in your mind.
So one more, right? We're gonna just keep playing devil's advocate because that's my nature. So then the next is like, look at the weaknesses and be honest with yourself. I mean, I look at my NI and my weakness is allowing themselves physical ease. Yes, that's like a really hard thing for me. And an SI weakness is thinking about new concepts and future ideas. Literally, Victor's SI, I'm NI, and just that little differentiation between the two makes a huge difference. But the more we understand it, the easier it is to communicate and the easier it is to be successful. So we're going to maybe hit pause for a second, take a minute, read through these and kind of circle which of the introverted you feel like you're mostly and which of the extroverted. Okay, you're back. So now we're gonna take just the extroverted functions and help you use these. This is just our creative way of like, okay, how could we take this if we're pretty confident that we know our dominant extroverted function and apply it to Enneagram.
Now, one quick thing I wanted to mention, because I don't know if we touched on this, but you can't be NE and NI. Whatever the first letter is, you can't have an I and an E of it. So F, you can't be FE and FI. You can't be TE or TI and TI.
You're gonna have one of each.
And in here it has a list of based on, so say you're like, SC totally sounds like me. That means you're either an ESTP or an ESFP.
If it's the first one. Like that's right.
It'll
Because someone could say
it'll be your first two. We're not talking about the third and fourth function. Right. It would be your first.
Right, but I'm saying if you think, second. I really identify with this SE, you still could be an introvert function first, in which case you wouldn't be the two that are listed there. That's assuming you're definitely positive that is your very first function, then you're one of those 2 types that are listed.
Yeah, and so when you go through the functions, no matter what, how it works, you're gonna have one N function, one S function, one T function, and one F function in there.
Did you get that? That's very important. You have an N function, you have an S function, you have a T function, and you have an F function. You have an observant part of you and an intuitive part of you. You have a thinking part of you and you have a feeling part of you.
And 2 of them are going to be have an E at the end, and 2 of them are going to have an I.
So it might be beneficial to write right now, put an N, an S, an F, and a T, and then look at those and be like, okay, which does it seem more? Am I SE or SI? Am I NE or NI? Am I TE, TI, FE, or FI? And that would help you also. This is, again, we're just going deeper and deeper into like, could this be better? Could you have mistyped? Let's question it this way. So I'm going to use it as an example. My first 2 of the N's.
Do you want me to hold it?
Well, okay. NI, so that means I'd cross out, I'm not any, okay? Then S, I'd look, okay, SI, well, if I'm NI, I can't be SI, correct?
Correct.
So see how, you can't really see it, but I'll,
yeah.
So if I know pretty darn well that I'm NI, then that means I can't be NE and I can't be SI.
Because you only have one N function, and if you have an NI, that means you have to have the opposite of function, which would be S and E.
Okay, so now process of elimination, I know I have an NI, I have an SE. When I come down to, so that was my introverted. When I look at my extroverted functions, TE is so me. So I'm like, okay, if I'm TE, I can't be FE, cross it out, and I can't be TI. That means I have to have the opposite. I have to have the opposite of a T is an F, the opposite of an E is an I. And just by doing that, at least you get down to your 4. The order of your 4 might be a little bit hard, but I think from the video you just listened to, you have a pretty good idea of what those are. Would you agree? That's a
Definitely.
easy way to
I
break
think
it
you
down.
guys, this is the total, if this might seem overwhelming.
This
but
is the TE way.
This might be overwhelming, but if you go through this whole process, I doubt you will mistype, really. And I think you're going to be able to nail down, yeah, that is exactly me, because you'll go through process of elimination in one direction, then we're reversing it and going this direction. And if this takes you an entire day or multiple days, that's okay, as long as you fully understand. I'm very confident this is the type.
Side note on this, so on our sheets we tell you your type, and I'm just reiterating what Isabel or what Gabby corrected me on. The type that we put, if we put type ESTP, ESFP, that means that's your first function. Okay, what we're doing is trying to get you extract all 4 of your functions. That doesn't mean if your letter's like, oh wait, I have SC but I'm not an ESTP, you still could have SE function.
It's just not your dominant
it's just not
function.
your number 1 function. And the other is the inferior is
Your weakest function.
is your 4th function.
Yeah, that's will be generally what you have this function, but you're not very good at it.
It'll be hard to even identify if you have it or not, because I think most of us wouldn't necessarily say, oh yes, that's so me, my 4th function, because you use your 4th, you kind of try not to use your 4th function generally.
But the 4th is valuable because you have 4 that you aren't really even capable of. So as somebody who really believes in like capability is the most important thing, I know we try to use our 4th function. If you can reach for it, if you can keep trying to grab it, it's never going to be your best function, but it is a function of potential.
It's also typically healthy for you. It pulls you out of the ones that you overuse.
Yeah.
So as you do this empowerment course, if you use that 4th function as to like bring up your weaknesses, Victor and I talked about this on a YouTube video, but it will help you
Grow into your best self.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about the FE type. So if you're an FE type, you either are an ENFJ,
A
which
protagonist.
is an ESFJ,
A console.
or I have it here, an ISFJ,
An advocate.
No,
Or-
ISFJ is a defender.
Defender.
Yeah. Or an
I was reading,
INFJ.
which is an advocate. Defender or advocate.
So that means you, let's start.
So we're gonna break down what we have analyzed this and tried to come up with general tendencies of what your most likely Enneagram is based off of your Myers-Briggs type. Now there could be some exceptions, but I think if you stick to this for the most part, it's gonna help you narrow down what your Enneagram really could be.
Yeah.
Okay, so FE types, remember, you are about building bridges, community.
Empathically, you're empathic. You can tell what other people are feeling very easily. You're naturally in tune with others' emotions, and you want to make sure that they feel emotionally valid.
So if you are an ISFJ, okay, I means that this FE is your 2nd function, because if you start with an I,
An introvert.
introverted function is really first. So your SI first. Now your FE. That puts you what's called a defender. You are highly likely either a 2 or a 6 Enneagram.
Correct.
You do have a possibility of being a 1 and a 9, however, the percentage likelihood goes down. However, those are 2 other possibilities. And we say that because the other types are really not possibilities.
So it's
unless
better
they're
to eliminate.
really-
There's no way you're a 3, a 4, a 5, a 7, or an 8. Cross those off. That way
Unless you're like some crazy exception, but
we know you're
give
special,
yourself-
but you should just trust us on this one. It'll make the video
it'll
shorter.
save work for you guys.
Okay, ESFJ, and go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're a console, which is the ESFJ, you have a dominant FE function because you're an extrovert. And you know already what FE means. If you are a console, you're most likely going to be a Enneagram type 2, 3, or 6. And occasionally you might be a 1 or a 4.
Okay, INFJ, an advocate. More than likely you are a 3 or a 4, because your FE 2nd and 1st is NI. So you're more about ideas, and just, again, trust us. More than likely those 2.
If you're a different Enneagram, a lot of times this is a major, automatically, yeah, you're probably not an INFJ, because a lot of times we can see people's Enneagrams come out in their life, and we can automatically kind of tell when they're not a 3 or a 4. And yet if you think you're an INFJ, it's pretty blatantly obvious that those two clash. You really have to be a 3 or a 4 to be an INFJ.
Good thing with this too is if you are really positive that you know your Enneagram, you can reverse engineer this one too and be like, wait, I know I'm a 6. I really thought I was an INFJ. You're probably not. They probably tested wrong. Okay, ENFJ, you are either a 1, an 8, more than likely a 1 or an 8, possibly a 3, 4, or 6.
Yeah, because the protagonist is, again, like the console, dominant, FE. The difference is that they're intuitive. And a type 1 and 8, like we talked about, remember the protagonist, they kind of are the leader and the content creator of events. And type 1s and 8s are really great at those things and are naturally in tune with that.
And I would say even more likely a 1 than even an 8.
Yeah.
If you really harness your creativity, your N as a protagonist, then it's possible to be 3, 4, and 6.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
you will be a 7.
Those are now your TE processes. So remember, it's either your first or second is your TE. If you're an ISTJ,
A logistician.
you are more than likely a type 5, which is where like I catch that actually for a type 8 in stress, they become type 5, and I go there a lot. And so that's where I know like, oh wait, I'm not really a type 5 at all. So you could be a 1 or a 4, but more than likely you're a 5.
Yeah, and did we need to cover
Now-
what TE means? Like
Really
Well,
quick
we
though, I
kind of
wanted
talked about
to-
TE, remember, is the person who like process, like put everything in the right, most efficient space.
One thing I wanted to quickly mention is that because ISTJs, it's very distinguished the way that it's very distinguished the way that 5s grow into an 8. You know, at their healthiest, they're type 8. So this can be a common mistype. Either you're an 8, or as an 8, you can think
Stress.
you can think that you're a different personality type, but truthfully, you get what I'm saying. That
yeah.
Well, you can always, if you're really confused, cross-reference with our Enneagram videos, but
just note that you could feel like an 8, but you're actually type 5 based on the fact that you know that your functions as an ISTJ.
ESTJ.
Is the executive. And the executive has a TE dominant.
Sorry, because I was saying INTJ and it was IS. I was confusing those two. Did it make sense?
Yeah.
Because I was saying, oh, I can't be that, but that was the ISTJs. Got it.
Okay.
ESTJ. Well, INTJ and ISTJ both tend to be 5s is the problem, right?
Yes. The difference is that if you're an ISTJ, you're most likely going to be a type 5 because type 5s are more about going with the system as it already is. And if you're an INTJ, you can still be a type 5, but you're also going to have a more likelihood of being something different, like a 1, a 3, a 4, or an 8.
Okay, so now to the extroverted ESTJs.
Yeah.
1 or 8, typically. Sometimes 3 and 5, but typically a 1 or an 8, and that's the executive. Or if you're a commander, you're ENTJ. There's a good chance you're an 8.
Type 8.
And distinguishing the ESTJ from the ENFJ, when you're an intuitive type, you have a possibility of being those more creative types, the 3, 4, and 6. Whereas the ESTJ
With a TE function.
the TE function kind of keeps them more limited to 1, 8, 3, and 5.
Yep.
If you're getting confused, make sure you have your letters on. We should probably
All your
Speak
worksheets, you should have all your worksheets with you right now. I think we'll
to make sure you stay on top of it.
All right.
Okay, so those are your TE types. So
We just did TE and FE. Now we're on to the SE and ME.
most of the TE types are 1, 5, or 8, if that helps the most. I'll just go off my top.
And what I started saying about the ISTJ and the 5 and the 8. So ISTJ is only one letter different from the INTJ. And the way it's important to pay attention to that N versus S difference, because a lot of times an ISTJ will think that could think that they're an 8, but they're actually just a 5 in growth, seeming like an 8, whereas an INTJ is usually an 8 and could in stress seem like a 5.
It's really interesting because one of my brothers is a type 5 and ISTJ, and whether I'm an ENTJ or INTJ, whatever, let's just say it's E. So me in stress becomes more like him as a 5, and 8 becomes a 5, and him in growth becomes more like me. And we love to argue, but it's like in our heads we've each come up with the like best TE version of no, this is how this needs to work, and like no, this is how this needs to work. And so it's really easy to narrow yourself down in this category, but within a 5 and an 8 it's a little harder because you see yourself
as both in a way.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So
All right,
S
okay.
or
Now we're on to the
Any.
any types, which is prospectors that we're first starting with. Actually, if you have an NE dominant, you're going to be a prospector. So if you think that you're a judging type, don't think like, oh, I think NE might be my dominant. It can be a little confusing, but just know that.
If you're NE, you are going to have a P at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
So ENFPs tend to be
Campaigners will 100% most likely be a type 7. The type 7s are also like golden retrievers if
there
they're
is
human
actually
beings.
it is.
few.
There's a lot of 6s too. You know,
Yes.
it probably like got 50% or 7s, 40% or 6s.
we don't go.
We're not
Hopefully, you
gonna
see the Enneagram video. Remember, you have a wing, so you might be a 6-7 as opposed to a
Yes.
7-6. But yes,
Yeah.
you have that 7 in you.
And sometimes you can occasionally be a type 4.
And then an INFP, the mediators tend to almost always be 4-3 combinations.
Yes. And sometimes you can be a 7 or 9, but most likely if you're a mediator, you're going to tend to be a type 4 or type 3.
Usually, actually, I would say it's more often than not, you're a 4 with a wing 3. I don't think
Yes.
they're usually, actually, it's very unlikely that you're a 4 with a wing 5.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it's very unlikely that you're a 3 with a wing 4.
And if you're a 3 with a wing 4, chances are you're an advocate.
Okay, so ENTP tend to be 7 with a wing 8,
Yes, the debater, in case you don't remember which ENTP is.
or possibly a 3 with a 4 wing,
Yes.
but less likely, right?
Yes. And then logician, which is
IN.
INTP, you're most likely to be a type 4 or a type 5, and occasionally you might be a type 9.
Don't confuse this with the logistician because sometimes they sound the same. Logician is INTP.
You like to grab all these ideas and put them in crazy boxes, but you don't
Not
necessarily
necessarily
do anything with them. And I think more than likely you're a 4 wing 5, not a 5 wing 4
Yep.
overall. Well, if you're the other way, you tend to be more of an S type. Okay, the SEs.
The SEs are the people, again, who remember, like to experience life and who are all about the present moment.
These are the entertainers and the adventurers, just as a reminder. So
Okay,
the entertainers are more often than not 6 wing 7s because if they were 7 predominantly, then they'd usually be a campaigner rather than an entertainer. But they're, as an entertainer, usually 6 with that 7 wing really strong. Some other exceptions are
Type 3s and 4s and 9s are possible as an entertainer, but much less likely. And then you get into the introverted version of entertainer, which is an adventurer. It also has an SE, and you're most likely going to be a type 4 with a 3 wing, or
you
might
have a 5 wing, huh?
you could probably have a 5 wing,
Yes,
but you're going to be a
definitely.
type 4. And then
I think the wings are equally as possible on that one.
yeah,
and-
so a type 4 for
And
the
then
most part.
6 and 9 are other possibilities.
Yeah, and then also with SE functions, you have an entrepreneur, an ESTP. If you're an ESTP, you're gonna have a dominant SE. All right, remember that. And you'll be most likely an Enneagram type 3, 7, or 8, and occasionally a 6.
Perfect. And then the last one's ISTP.
Yep, a virtuoso.
Okay. And we haven't talked about this now. More than likely you are a type 9. Occasionally a 4
Or
or
a 4 or
5.
5.
And maybe a 7. Yes, but-
Except if you're 7, you're probably actually that extrovert version of that type.
Yeah,
But-
so it's
yeah.
probably not.
So, typically, yes, 9 or 4 wing 5. I think possibly you could be a 5 wing
I think
4.
so too.
So let's
4 or
get rid
5.
of that 7. You could be a 9 or 4-5 or 5-4. And when I say 5-4, it means 5 dominantly, 4 wing, or 4 dominantly, 5 wing.
Perfect.
All right. Whew, I think that wrapped up for typing for your Myers-Briggs. You can go look at Enneagram video to see where that is. We also, have these other, there's a lot of ways. So if this one was really confusing, coming at it from Enneagram and reversing it, working
I
it
would
back
suggest
this
this way first. I
think
think this
so
way is
too.
going to be easier once you've narrowed down your possible Enneagrams and you have a pretty good idea of maybe your natural tendencies going into the Enneagram.
After all, there are 9 Enneagram types and 16 Myers-Briggs, so
We can
there
break
can
it
be a lot.
down smaller. All right, thanks.
Bye.